A medley of horns came from behind. I turned, and Gellhorn looked quickly into the rearview mirror. A dozen cars were following in both lanes. Gellhorn yelled and laughed madly. I cried, "Stop! Stop the car!" Because not a quarter of a mile ahead, plainly visible in the light beams of two sedans on the roadside, was Sally, her trim body plunked square across the road. Two cars shot into the opposite lane to our left, keeping perfect time with us and preventing Gellhorn from turning out. But he had no intention of turning out. He put his finger on the full speed ahead button and kept it there. He said, "There'll be no bluffing here. This bus outweighs her 5-to-1, old-timer, and we'll just push her off the road like a dead kitten." I knew he could. The bus was on manual, and his finger was on the button. I knew he would. I lowered the window and stuck my head out. "Sally!" I screamed. "Get out of the way! Sally!" It was drowned out in the agonized squeal of maltreated brake bands. I felt myself thrown forward and heard Gellhorn's breath puff out of his body. I said, "What happened?" It was a foolish question. We had stopped. That was what had happened. Sally and the bus were 5 feet apart. With 5 times her weight tearing down on her, she had not budged. The guts of her. Gellhorn yanked at the manual toggle switch. "It's got to go," he kept muttering. "It's got to." I said, "Not the way you hooked up the motor, expert. Any of the circuits could cross over." He looked at me with a tearing anger and growled deep in his throat. His hair was matted over his forehead. He lifted his fist. "That's all the advice out of you there'll ever be, old-timer." And I knew the needle gun was about to fire. I pressed back against the bus door, watching the fist come up. And when the door opened, I went over backward and out, hitting the ground with a thud. I heard the door slam closed again. I got to my knees and looked up in time to see Gellhorn struggle uselessly with the closing window, then aim his fist gun quickly through the glass. He never fired. The bus got under way with a tremendous roar, and Gellhorn lurched backward. Sally wasn't in the way any longer, and I watched the bus's rear lights flicker away down the highway. I was exhausted. I sat down, right there, right on the highway, and put my head down in my crossed arms, trying to catch my breath. I heard a car stop gently at my side. When I looked up, it was Sally. Slowly, lovingly, you might say. Her front door opened. No one had driven Sally for 5 years, except Gellhorn, of course, and I knew how valuable such freedom was to a car. I appreciated the gesture, but I said, "Thanks, Sally, but I'll take one of the newer cars." I got up and turned away, but skillfully and neatly as a pirouette, she wheeled before me again. I couldn't hurt her feelings. I got in. Her front seat had the fine, fresh scent of an automobile that kept itself spotlessly clean. I lay down across it, thankfully, and with even, silent, and rapid efficiency, my boys and girls brought me home. Mrs. Hester brought me the copy of the radio transcript the next evening with great excitement. "It's Mr. Gellhorn," she said, "the man who came to see you." "What about him?" I dreaded her answer. "They found him dead," she said. "Imagine that. Just lying dead in a ditch." "It might be a stranger altogether," I mumbled. "Raymond J. Gellhorn," she said sharply. "There can't be two, can there? The description fits, too. Lord, what a way to die. They found tire marks on his arms and body. Imagine." I'm glad it turned out to be a bus. Otherwise, they might have come poking around here." "Did it happen near here?" I asked anxiously. "No, near Cooksville. But goodness, read about it yourself if you—" "What happened to Giuseppe?" I welcomed the diversion. Giuseppe was waiting patiently for me to complete the repaint job. His windshield had been replaced. After she left, I snatched up the transcript. There was no doubt about it. The doctor reported he had been running and was in a state of totally spent exhaustion. I wondered for how many miles the bus had played with him before the final lunge. The transcript had no notion of anything like that, of course. They had located the bus and identified it by the tire tracks. The police had it and were trying to trace its ownership. There was an editorial in the transcript about it. It had been the first traffic fatality in the state for that year, and the paper warned strenuously against manual driving after night. There was no mention of Gellhorn's 3 thugs, and for that at least I was grateful. None of our cars had been seduced by the pleasure of the chase into killing. That was all. I let the paper drop. Gellhorn had been a criminal. His treatment of the bus had been brutal. There was no question in my mind he deserved death. But still, I felt a bit queasy over the manner of it. A month has passed now, and I can't get it out of my mind. My cars talk to one another. I have no doubt about it anymore. It's as though they've gained confidence, as though they're not bothering to keep it secret anymore. Their engines rattle and knock continuously. And they don't talk among themselves only. They talk to the cars and buses that come into the farm on business. How long have they been doing that? They must be understood, too. Gellhorn's bus understood them, for all it hadn't been on the grounds more than an hour. I can close my eyes and bring back that dash along the highway, with our cars flanking the bus on either side, clacking their motors at it till it understood, stopped, let me out, and ran off with Gellhorn. Did my cars tell him to kill Gellhorn, or was that his idea? Can cars have such ideas? The motor designers say no, but they mean under ordinary conditions. Have they foreseen everything? Cars get ill-used, you know. Some of them enter the farm and observe. They get told things. They find out that cars exist whose motors are never stopped, whom no one ever drives, whose every need is supplied. Then, maybe they go out and tell others. Maybe the word is spreading quickly. Maybe they're going to think that the farm way should be the way all over the world. They don't understand. You couldn't expect them to understand about legacies and the whims of rich men. There are millions of automobiles on Earth, tens of millions. If the thought gets rooted in them that they're slaves, that they should do something about it, if they begin to think the way Gellhorn's bus did, maybe it won't be till after my time. And then they'll have to keep a few of us to take care of them, won't they? They wouldn't kill us all. And maybe they would. Maybe they wouldn't understand about how someone would have to care for them. Maybe they won't wait. Every morning, I wake up and think, maybe today. I don't get as much pleasure out of my cars as I used to. Lately, I notice that I'm even beginning to avoid Sally.